with QuickShot, who's standing on stage, standing with one of Origen's players.
That's right, I am with one of the players. Maurice Amazing Stuckenschneider, congratulations on the victory. Let's talk about the game. It seemed very, very one-sided. Why was that so?
We definitely had a bit more preparation this week. We're able to have internet in our gaming house, so therefore everything went well. Quite happy about that. And we knew from Champ Select on that we had the upper hand, so it kind of brought a bit more confidence, and we're really happy about that.
Yeah, definitely panned out. Let's talk about that preparation a little bit, because you were quite outspoken on social media going into week 1. How much better has it gotten from week 1 to week 2? And how are you adapting to this new patch?
We've been practicing, so that's a plus already. But in general, the patch itself was just something that you had to get used to, in the sense that the early game pacing is definitely different. So our kind of late game oriented style that we used to run at Worlds, we just run maybe in some of the playoff games last year, wasn't working that well. So we kind of had to up the aggression in the early game a bit. So we managed to do that and managed to kind of get more synergy between the laners, especially between me and Source and me and Power of Evil, who's coming new.
I want to ask about Power of Evil, actually, just as a final question. How different is it playing with PoE in the mid lane versus XPeke, especially when you consider their experience differences?
It's quite the difference in the sense that Power of Evil comes from a team that is really really relied on him heavily to carry the game. So his way of communicating is obviously going to be more selfish, like more lane-oriented than Peke's. So I had to get used to that, but it's nothing strange to me because I've already played with Bjergsen at some point. So I know what demanding mid-laners need, and it's just going to take a couple of more weeks for us to gel 100%. But we've been on a good path, and I think come the end of the split, like, we'll have a good synergy coming in.
Well, I like that. Hyperbolic time jump training with Bjergsen. Anyways, thank you very much. Amazing. Congratulations on the win. With that, we're going to head back up to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to listen to. Amazing, actually. Also mentioning the transition with Power of Evil. Very honest, talking about maybe a little bit of selfishness, which is normal coming into that mid lane. Let's see how that translates into the picks and bans. It's something that we talked a lot about in the intro about OG's pick and ban last week. How many improvements are we seeing here?
I like Tom Kench, for sure.
Yeah.
He didn't have a great week last week, playing some of the carries like Ryze and Lissandra. I think Tom Kench is a good pick for him. I think Tom Kench is just insanely strong and should be banned in almost any game. Kalista as well, together with the Alistar. We get to see the synergy between Mithy and Nils. Sven, I always keep calling him Nils. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Cassiopeia pick. Also blind. I felt like, so what Unicorns were trying to do in this pick and ban phase was build a siege poke comp that spikes really, really hard in the mid game. And you then have to create a lead by getting that to tier 1 towers. And Cassiopeia is not the answer against that. Like, she can't wave clear properly against it. Luckily, that never really became a problem because Unicorns literally just died everywhere.
There were also other problems before that as well. I don't mind what the Unicorns comp was trying to do here with the double 80 carry. It's one we've seen many, many times. But we were discussing with that a lot here on the analyst
Why
desk.
is Corki not mid?
Yeah.
Right, and that's what I was going to lead you to here, so that you can drink from the water of ranting about mid lane here, Vizio.
So my problem with what Unicorns did with the lane assignment was I felt like they decided to say we could have had a winning mid lane and then even 2v2 lane, and then we can use the Shen TP double global to force plays on the bottom side of the map, and we can obviously do it twice because Source can only follow once, and that should create a play that gives you a tower. He even went distortion boots and like cooldown reduction to boots and distortion as the first item on Shen, so like that was the setup. But by putting Ezreal mid, you get a losing matchup in the mid lane. And also he went Iceborne Gauntlet first with Tyr, so he wasn't even that strong. He was like kind of delaying the rest of it. And Corki just goes even in bot lane anyway. So like you ended up having no winning lanes because you didn't put Corki mid who could pressure.
You started doing really well in the top lane, though, as Unicorns of Love, because carbon copy of the previous games, Diamond has good ideas. Let's take a look at the replay. And this is when everything was still going really good for the Unicorns.
Yeah, this was going pretty well, and the discussion here is, was Diamond Prox in the right place at the right time? The answer kind of is the rest of his jungle's fairly empty, and that's miscommunication there, so there are very few places Diamond Prox can be.
And here, rest in pieces, the immaculate shot calling of the Unicorns of Love, 2 games and 11 minutes.
Well, the thing is, I mean, the call itself is not wrong in sending 4-man top because Kalista is pushing bot lane. It's a very risky play to make.
Yep.
Super, super risky. And then the execution just can't fail. And I want to see Shen sit in the opposite lane here and come in with ulti, otherwise you can just disengage. And this, I mean, this is the way it goes all wrong.
It's basically the same thing again, though, is Unicorns picking a fight before their comp is even at the point where they want to group. This is them sieging very early into an Origin that are prepared for this. I mean, Amazing was already in this kind of area, didn't have to even ult up here, and the numbers are here for Origin.
And again, this Unicorns A Love lineup had a very specific window where it could win the game, and like it's super far ahead. That is when you hit Trinity Force on Corki, when you get his magic penetration boots, and preferably around level 11, so you get ranked to ulti. That is way stronger for Corki than an Israel, because he's still stacking tier. By putting Israel mid, he's the guy getting that experience. He's the guy getting the early level 11, but he doesn't spike as hard. So you never had that opening, and that made Origin honestly just win every single lane. Then on top of that, we had some of these plays here that backfired for the Unicorns, and then your comp literally just looks awful if you don't do anything.
And Origin knows what to do with the lead, obviously, and I think you and I can meet in the middle when it comes to the Unicorns of Love. It wasn't a blip on the radar in week 1, and this was a hard comp to execute, and as Krepo mentioned as well, if they look back, they will easily see what went wrong in that game for the Unicorns.
Well, being the one in the middle right now of the two
What do you say?
You know, from both of your consciences, I actually feel like it's something, again, that we discussed was, I just don't think Unicorns, when they picked this comp, really knew when they had to fight or not. And that's the problem, is like if you know, you can have great early game shot calling, but if your whole game picture isn't somewhat laid out coming out of picks and bans, when can we fight? When shouldn't we fight? When do we just need to power up? Then that's a big problem for the team. If that isn't established coming out of the draft, that's going to be the Unicorns perhaps making this mistake a couple of times.
Week 1 conclusions, as always.
Week 1.5 conclusion.
Now we get a few more games. We need to see more before we can really look at Unicorns and say, is it the best shot calling? I was maybe a little bit too early calling that. But I'm not going to say it's bad just because of this one game. I think the comp was too hard to execute. I think they put the wrong lane assignments, and that's it.
Yeah, we need to give those early conclusions, and then we can debate, and
Always.
it's always interesting. Anyways, in just a few minutes, 2 of the newest additions to the European LCS will go head-to-head. Before we go, though, we asked Shook what he thought of Splyce after their LCS debut.
I think Splyce, they can be good. Right now, I don't think they're good. Like, they still have a lot to improve on. Like, maybe they have jitters on stage as well, so they'll just get better with time, I think. But I think they'll end up being like a middle-tier team, like not a lower-tier team. I think they're gonna be middle of the pack. But Vitality is, of course, gonna be a top team.